Today we sat down with youth violence prevention professional Alexis Delgado to discuss the power dynamics of the Diddy trial and how coercion does not equal consent. Originally from Honolulu, Hawaii, he was raised in a Puerto Rican military family and relocated to Frederick, Maryland in 2012. Currently serving as the bilingual youth prevention coordinator with Hartley House, he has been a part of the youth prevention team for the past year under Project Hearts. Project Hearts is dedicated to empowering and supporting the youth of Frederick County through programming and networks grounded in the principles of healing, empowerment, allies, resilience, trust, and safety. They aim to promote healthy relationships and sexuality while fostering a safe and inclusive environment for all young people. All right, thank you so much, Alexis, for being here to talk about the Diddy trial. Before we get into all of that, would you like to introduce yourself to the people who are listening?
Absolutely. So I'll just give the kind of same introduction I give to the kids when we do our presentations. But so my name is Alexis Delgado. Just a little bit about myself personally is I was born in Hawaii, but my family's actually from Puerto Rico, and my father served in the Army for over 20 years. My mom owns a daycare. She's been a business owner for over a decade now. So that's kind of the environment that I grew up on, kind of moving all around. And then moved over here in Frederick in 7th grade. And for anybody that knows Frederick, I went to West Frederick Middle School. Then I went to Frederick High. The old Frederick High was the last graduating class in 2017. Then I went to Towson University. And then after some time, just working, and I thought I wanted to get more involved in the community. So that's why I decided to start working with Hartley House and start working with specifically Project Hearts, which is Hartley House's youth initiative where we go to the schools, we go to the high schools, middle schools, YMCA, Boys and Girls Club. And we talk about healthy relationships, consent, and just kind of the whole idea is kind of to end the cycle of violence within relationships. So that's kind of what Project Hearts is. And then just about myself personally, aside from this, I'm also a youth pastor at Reset Church, which is a bilingual church here in Frederick. Other than that, some things that I try to do the most is I try to be as creative as possible. So some of the ways that I do that is, first of all, is painting. This is one of my first paintings. It's called Imposter Syndrome. So I do a lot of painting in my free time. I love to create music, create clothing, design clothing. I usually say this when we have the Project Hearts shirts on, but we have these shirts that we wear for Project Hearts, and we all designed them as a team. It's original design. So it's something I'm really proud of. And then other than that, also train kickboxing at Bauer House MMA here in Frederick. Highly recommend it to anybody that's interested in martial arts, high level gym, great culture, and it's just a great hobby in general. So that's pretty much my life.
Ah. So you'll definitely see Alexis around because you're a true Frederictonian.
Yeah, I've noticed that since I started working here, I'm like, wow, I see. Speaking of Bauer House, I'll do my presentations here in school and I'll mention Bauer House and I'll see kids at the gym too, which is really gratifying when I see in my head, I'm like, wow, maybe they thought about it and me mentioning it puts them on this journey of martial arts and hopefully better living. So yeah, I definitely noticed that. I see a lot of kids around. I'm like, okay, I'm actually in the community, which is good.
It's amazing to live and work in the community that you live in because you know the people, you know the culture, you know the vibe, and that's truly immeasurable. Yeah. And also, I know I plug this every single time, but if you are listening to the audio version, that's fantastic. But definitely head to YouTube to see Alexis? Yeah, I don't know why your name stumbled out of me. Your amazing art. It's phenomenal, and you definitely don't want to miss out.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I might as well just plug now, whatever.
Please. Yeah,
so I have a piece, but also have like I said, I design clothing too. So I have a clothing brand called V by X. So it's V_by_X on Instagram, and I have a shirt that has this painting on. So if you want to support this painting, you think it's really cool, yeah, definitely check out one of the shirts. And if you're interested in the actual painting, then hit me in the DMs. That's a different story. But yeah,
get the original painting. Yeah,
that's a different story. But yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and get into the topic today. So we are talking about the Diddy trial. So for anyone who maybe lives under a rock or doesn't know who Diddy is, who is Sean Combs? Can you give us a little summary?
Yeah, so first of all, Sean Combs is pretty much a music media mogul. He He's kind of like the head of Bad Boy Records, which is a big record producing company, still is. And my personal exposure to Mr. Diddy was I'm a huge fan of Notorious B.I.G., the rapper Biggie Smalls, and he's was my first. Just one of my first favorite artists ever, and Diddy was his manager, and he was really part of making Biggie Smalls kind of the artist that he was. And so that's kind of where I got exposed to who Diddy was. And then growing up, he kind of built a reputation for being very like I said, he's a manager, but then he'd like get on songs too. There's a lot of songs where he might rap a little bit, sing a little bit. He always wanted to be in the music video. So then Diddy kind of got this whole thing. It was like, man, he really likes a spotlight. Like he has these rappers, but he's always trying to get in the music videos. And through the years, with if you know anything about hip hop music, there's always beefs, there's always stuff like that. So people would a lot of times talk about how Diddy likes to be in the music videos. He's not a rapper, but he always wants to be in the screen. So that's kind of my exposure to who Diddy was. He's pretty much the head of Bad Boy Records. That was Biggie Smalls' label, and he was just like this media mogul, and he was just known for being very powerful person within the music industry, specifically hip hop music, but just music in general also.
Yeah, so people wanting to be on his good side because they wanted to either be backed by him, or I don't know if people would get clout if he was in their music videos.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, this is a guy that's like very well known. It's kind of like at that point, if you had a co-sign from Diddy, that means you were legit, like you were a real artist, and you be sent to the stratosphere. Like he's managed a lot of artists. If you guys know Mace, he managed Mace during that time, or he was part of that label. I believe Lil Kim was a part of it too. So there's a lot of big artists that were part of that label that you might have known, and that's all Diddy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you kind of touched upon this, but what were your thoughts or ideas of Sean Combs before these allegations related to the Diddy trial came to light?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, he was really known as like this big personality in hip hop. It was like I said, always wanted to be in the music videos, and then now kind of after post Biggie Smalls, post kind of the early 2000s when Bad Boy Records wasn't as kind of like apparent within the music industry, he kind of became like a personality, a media personality in general. And specifically, one thing that Diddy was known for, which we're going to definitely talk about, was his parties. It was always known that Diddy threw the best parties. He threw the craziest parties, and you got to go to the all white Diddy party. Like that was like crazy before all this stuff. He was known for very influential media personality and known for kind of throwing these crazy parties.
Right. And if you were there, it meant something. It meant you were big.
Right.
Or you were going to make it big kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely one of those parties that's like all the celebrities went to, no matter who you are. People went to, actors, rappers, athletes, anybody would go to a Diddy party, and they were just known for. There's plenty of clips you can look back and people are like, man, ain't no party like a Diddy party. And like, yeah, so that's kind of what I knew of Diddy at that point.
Right, before all of this came to light. And now we realize there really isn't any party like a Diddy party, unfortunately. Yeah. But for those who are not, again, paying attention, maybe living under a rock, when it comes to the Diddy trial, can you give us a little summary of, because we're going to dive deep into it. So again, just a summary of like what it was, what he was charged on.
Yeah. So I believe some of the charges that he was first of all charged with was like racketeering and all that kind of thing. But just to make a long story short, essentially the idea, what people were kind of mentioning was that Diddy had these crazy parties, right? They were really crazy. But it kind of came to understand that in these parties, there were not only a lot of sex workers in this party that maybe weren't there totally consensually. There was a lot of unconsensual things done. There was a lot of wild stuff happening within those parties where it really crossed the line legally. And that's specifically the party. And then another big thing that happened a few years ago was him being caught on video actually abusing his fiancée at the time, Cassie, caught on tape. It's a pretty wild video if you watch it, because it's like obviously it's terrible what happened, but it's also, if you really watch the confidence that he walks out just in the middle of like a hallway, like nothing happened, and just it kind of goes to show how much power, how normal these kind of crazy activities for him were. And then the big meme was the whole thing that they raided his house and they found a whole bunch of baby oil and stuff like that. And
like, wasn't it like 50 pounds?
Yeah, a ridiculous amount.
Yeah.
And not only that, people talked about how there was sometimes that like a lot of things would be laced with other drugs to kind of get people wanting to be involved in these long, sexual escapades. And so that's kind of the whole thing that people came to learn. Okay, this Diddy stuff again. It's not just crazy parties. He's flying people in. There's sex workers that maybe aren't totally consensual in the situation. People are being drugged. Some people are being abused. And one thing that happened during the trial that is like, just to kind of put the ribbon on it. I'm a big fan of Kid Cudi too. And during that time, there was a point that Sean Combs, he was married to Cassie, and they broke up. And then during that time, Kid Cudi, if you know Kid Cudi, he got into a relationship with Cassie, and then stuff happened, and then Kid Cudi's car got blown up, like on some Joker, Dark Knight 2008 thing. So yeah, he blew up the car, and then so that all happened. It's in the court documents. Cudi goes up to confront him. He's like, what happened? What's the problem? Why you blow up my car? And then one thing that he said that was pretty crazy is that Diddy was like standing outside the window. He said he was standing looking outside the window like a supervillain. So he kind of had like this aura of untouchable. He was kind of untouchable, and that's kind of where it kind of became even scary, the whole Diddy thing, because like we said, it's these crazy parties, but then people are learning, oh, this guy's actually powerful. He might have actually, there was also rumors. I mean, this is a separate thing. There's no, but definitely allegedly, but then there's people connecting him to things that happened with Biggie Smalls and Tupac during that time when they lost their life, people connecting the dots there, that people saying that Diddy might possibly be involved with that kind of thing allegedly. So there's a lot of things where we're learning that it's not just these crazy parties, sexual escapades, but it's also people. He's threatening people's lives. He's seen as like a supervillain. He's, he's beating his partner at the time. So it's just people learning that it's not only these crazy parties, but it's also, abuse happening and, unconsensual behavior also.
And you mentioned something really important too that I want to highlight. I mean, that's all very important. But you said that after the video where he was abusing Cassie came out, he looked unfazed. He looked very powerful after that. He kind of just walked down the hallway as if nothing happened.
Right.
I think that shows just maybe how he normalized that behavior, right? And how powerful he thought he was of, oh, I'm going to get away with this. Yeah. And it's okay.
Yeah, and from my understanding, I remember that, like I said, it was caught on video, and obviously Diddy's he's a smart guy, so he went to go find the video and pay the guy, the employee that has the video. So he even went to go bribe the dude afterwards. So it kind of goes to show, specifically when we're talking about relationships and stuff, how a good example of like financial abuse. Obviously, we're seeing physical, emotional, but him using power, his money and power to control people around him, to make people do things. So he can abuse somebody because he knows at the end of the day he's so rich, though he'll probably pay him off, and they probably would keep their mouth shut. So that kind of comes to show us how much power is not only physical, it can be kind of financial. It could be kind of your, for lack of a better term, like your aura, like the everything around you can also control and abuse people.
Absolutely. When we look at the Power and Control Wheel, which is a document that was created specifically about intimate partner violence and domestic violence, it shows that there are so many different ways an abuser can assert power and control over a victim. And it's not just physical. In 99% of abusive relationships, financial abuse occurs. Right. And there are so many different forms of power and control that can be used against a victim. And especially when you're talking about systems of power and control and people using that, it can really, really prevent somebody from leaving the abuse, prevent somebody from talking about the abuse, prevent somebody from starting an investigation about the abuse, because they have real fear that if they speak up, their well-being is not going to be okay, and they're not going to be safe.
Yeah, so that's a perfect segue. That leads us to learning about Cassie. People are talking about
last name Ventura, Cassie Ventura, right?
Cassie Ventura.
Again, for those who may be living under a rock.
Right, yeah. I forget that not everybody knows. But Cassie, who was Diddy's spouse at the time, again, she was a part of the abuse, caught on video, and then again, this leads to when we're talking about abuse, why it's so hard to leave the relationships. People are like, bro, why doesn't Cassie just leave? He has him on video. She could sue him, blah, blah, blah. She can leave, all that. Again, we're understanding that Diddy is a powerful person. And when he met Cassie was like a teenage, like she was like 18, 19, 20, very young lady. So, she's a young artist. She's trying to be she's trying to make it. She meets Diddy, this powerful guy.
Who at the time has a label and everything, right?
Exactly. So he holds the opportunity that she's kind of living for. So that's one reason when we're thinking about power is we think about like the relationship that they have, the fact that he has this
inherent power imbalance.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So then that makes it hard for her to leave. It's like, man, I need this opportunity kind of thing. And then we're already learning that he already abused her and he's already blowing up cars. So not only that, she actually feels not only her career, but fears for her life if she decides to leave the relationship because this dude might actually go blow up her car or something like that, or set her up doing something. So those are some of the reasons why these relationships can be so hard to lead, these very unhealthy, abusive relationships, because it's that, and then it's also the idea of, if anybody knows about what Stockholm syndrome is, it's essentially that you build this attachment with your abuser, that this person is constantly giving and taking, showing good sides, showing really bad sides. Obviously, that messes with our brains. So you build kind of this attachment to this person where it's like you feel like, you just build this attachment that even though they're hurting you, there's still somebody so important to you that's hard to leave that relationship. So those are some of the reasons that why an individual like Cassie or any individual that may be caught in a similar situation, it can be hard to leave because, like I said, physically, emotionally attached, financially. So it's really hard to leave. That's why when we look at the case, later in the case, a lot of the things didn't really hold up because it's like there's a lot of other things coming up. You have Cassie, saying one day that he abused me and then kind of also talking about how other days were good, other days were bad. It can be hard to actually prosecute and that kind of thing, especially when the person's really powerful, like someone like Diddy.
Absolutely. And, Stockholm syndrome, also called trauma bonding as well, very similar things where you create a bond with somebody who is putting you through trauma, right? And again, when you are getting so much of what you want and what you need from another person, it can be really hard to break that. And we don't just see that in like famous cases like this. We see this in scenarios where somebody may be disabled and their caretaker is their abuser, right? And so their caretaker is the one that's getting them groceries, getting them to and from locations. And without that person, they wouldn't have food. They wouldn't have access to go get food, or they wouldn't be able to go from one location to the next. And so when we're talking about power imbalances, it can come in so many different forms, but I think when somebody has more power in society, there's just a greater harm that can be done, which we obviously are seeing with Diddy.
Yeah, and it's just kind of shows how when individuals have, like you said, have this power and able to control the people around them, it kind of gives them this sense of invincibility where it's like I said, Diddy feels comfortable, abusing Cassie on cam because he already feels like he's indestructible, that this money and all these kind of things can protect him. And then that's why it's so important to, at least when there's an individual, obviously we hope that nobody's in a situation like this, but it's important to understand. Like we always talk about, like if you have a friend that's in an unhealthy relationship, is like understand, like kind of get in their shoes, like, yeah, to you, it's very clear that this is a terrible situation, but you're also not seeing, again, it's not always terrible for these people. Like Cassie talked about how obviously she got abused, but she also talked about a lot of days were really good.
Yes, and also that cycle of abuse.
Right.
So there's a cycle of abuse, which I'll talk about a little bit. So there's the tension building phase of the cycle, and it's usually happens often where somebody feels like they have to walk on eggshells. The victim feels like an escalated event is going to happen around the corner. So they're on edge. Maybe their partner is reprimanding them more, telling them that they're not doing things well enough. And it's ramping up where they can tell abuse is around the corner. Then usually there is an abusive incident. Again, it doesn't need to be physical, but it is like a high intense abusive incident. It could be being yelled at, screamed at, sexual abuse, financial abuse, right? It can take so many different forms. But then the almost addictive part of the power cycle is that after the violent incident, it doesn't have to be physically violent, but the incident, then there's the honeymoon phase. And in the honeymoon phase, the abusers are often offering the victim gifts flowers, new jewelry, whatever it may be. That's very gendered, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. The abuser can be a woman as well, and the victim can be a man. We see that at Harley House too. But it can also be, oh, I'm going to get better. I'm never going to do it again, right? And if you are with somebody, it's usually because you like them or even love them. And so you want to believe the best in them. You want to believe that what they're saying is true. And it feels good to be cared for. It feels good to get flowers and to be bought things, right? Like, come on, who wouldn't want that?
Absolutely.
So that in and of itself is really addictive. And then you get into the walking on eggshell phase again, because unfortunately that, love bombing doesn't last.
Yeah. And one important thing to think about when we're talking about the cycle of violence, again, the one thing that we always talk with the kids is to understand that, like, not everybody lives in a healthy household where they see healthy relationships being portrayed. So I know that's one thing I learned in my life, understanding that there's a lot of individuals that they might have grown up in a house where maybe one of their parents were abusing the other person physically, yelling at them. Maybe they were being, going out of the relationship, constantly seeing that kind of behavior. So you got to understand that for a lot of individuals that maybe weren't living in the traditional kind of like a nuclear family household, the idea of somebody yelling at them, somebody lying to them, somebody, stepping outside of the relationship. Those ideas they're normalized. So a lot of people come with the impression that cheating and arguments, that's normal in a relationship. So when these abusive experiences happen to them, they don't really think they just think this is how a relationship is. Like, that's what happens. I saw my parents do that. I saw my uncles, aunt, grandparents yelling all the time and doing all these kind of things. So that's why it's so important to understand why it can be hard, because a lot of us don't always. Like, for me, I can just say, I always tell myself, like, not everybody thinks the way you think. Not everybody looks at the world the way that you look at the world. Some people were given a different outlook, so their idea of what a relationship isn't necessarily what is always the healthiest. So that's why Project Hearts is here, because we're trying to learn, we're trying to help the youth see that, like, how a healthy relationship should be. So a lot of the things that we're learning at home may not be the healthiest thing. So it's just understanding what a healthy relationship looks like. And that's why it can be so hard for an individual like Cassie or any individual in this kind of situation, why it can be hard, because they were never given kind of a template of what a healthy relationship looks like.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, we see that a lot. And that's why Project Hearts is so amazing, going in the middle and the high schools to hopefully share this information as soon as possible so we can prevent violence before it occurs.
Yeah. And one thing I'd like to say, just to talk about the youth of Frederick, and any parents that might be speaking, a lot of these things that we're talking about, kids, I mean, not specifically this stuff, but like, we're talking about unhealthy relationships. Kids are seeing this stuff online. They know what a quote unquote toxic relationship is. They know what cheating is. I've heard young kids talking about the idea of cheating in a relationship. So the point is, these are conversations that are, I mean, at your own discretion, but it's something to have. A lot of kids just need to be given the space to have this conversation. Not just kids, but people in general. That's kind of what Project Hearts is here for, to give people a space to have these conversations, ask these questions. Because like I said, a lot of these kids that we talk to, like I said, they know what we're talking about. They might have seen it in their own house, they might have seen it online, but they're not really given the space to talk about it and learn and think. So that's why it's important to be open to these kind of conversations.
Absolutely. And I know this has happened a lot when I've done trainings. I'm sure it's happened to you as well. But oftentimes when we're sharing all of this information, people will share that they have either somebody close to themselves in their lives that has experienced this form of abuse, or maybe themselves have experienced this abuse. And that's why it's so important to support and validate people when they share that they've been a survivor as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's one thing that we do when we do our high school presentations, that we'll actually bring in a survivor to tell their story. And then one thing about that is, when we're thinking about the survivor themselves, it's very gratifying for them to be able to get this experience off their chest with the idea that it can help other kids. So when we're thinking about the survivors, it's a really great experience for them to be able to kind of share their story and kind of get it out of their bodies and kind of help other individuals. And when we're talking about the kids, it's really cool because it's like, we're talking about relationships, we're talking about all this kind of stuff throughout the week, and at the end, they actually meet somebody that's dealt with these kind of things that we talked about, and they can also give the realistic take. It's not always doom and gloom, but it's just like
But it's not always sunshine and rainbows either.
right,
you know?
exactly. So it's just like, okay, it's one thing for me and Jordan or Alexandra to walk in and talk, but it's another thing for actually have somebody there telling their story. So like I said, yeah, it's really important to support any survivor, an individual that's in your life that maybe have dealt with that, or maybe you know somebody. Contact Hartley House. That's why we're here to support you guys. And like I said, you're not. One thing that I always like to say is like you're not alone at all. Like you'd be surprised how many individuals deal with the same kind of stuff. And I think that's the biggest thing when we're talking about these situations. People feel alone. That it's only happened to them. No, there's a lot of people that are here to support you, and just there for you.
I know we're kind of going back and forth between the Frederick County community and the Diddy trial and Casey Ventura. So I know she decided to testify publicly, right? Can we talk about, why testifying publicly, and we kind of hit upon that, can be so emotionally and psychologically and even physically taxing on somebody?
Yeah, I mean, again, if we're thinking about Cassie, she's in a relationship with this person. I'm not sure I think they separated, but at the end of the day, this is an individual that she has a strong attachment to. So, and then again, there's also an individual that we hear that is also a powerful person. So not only you're dealing with all this kind of stuff, there's probably constantly people, the media's at your door, your face is being exposed. And the biggest thing is that every time that she talks about the story, and then we talk about this when survivors, this individual's having to relive this stuff. So for somebody like Cassie, she's talking about her experience. She's having to relive these situations. So it can be hard for her emotionally. I mean, I can imagine how hard it is having to talk about that over and over again. And not only, I'm sure she's had conversations with, Diddy at some points where, this idea of like, you're my girl, feeling that she needs to support him. Like we said, she has this attachment. So a part of her may feel that like, she's kind of betraying this person, that she's betraying Diddy. Like, even though we know that he's somebody that's, highly, unhealthy and all that, but like in her eyes, it can feel like a betrayal. So it can be hard for her to really give a true statement. And like we said, when we're talking about the things with Cassie and Diddy, she was very young. Like, again, she was early 20s, late teens. So she's like imprinted in Diddy. So it got to be hard to be able to give a very clear understanding. And one thing when we talk about survivors in Hartley House, this specifically Mel, but many people, it takes them a long time to talk about the experience, to be comfortable. We've had survivors that talk about it took them a few years to think about the situation, be like, wow, I might have actually gotten abused. I didn't even realize it, like, because it's been so normalized. So that's what we need to understand, that an individual like Cassie, she might not even really not understand, but see the great scope of what happened until maybe years later. So for her, she's like in it. So with all that happening, it can be really hard to really give a clear testimony and with all these kind of things.
Oh my goodness, you said so many things I want to expand upon. One, yes, it's so true, right? Like there are so many times where as survivors are processing what has happened to them, they realize, oh, this other moment in my life that I didn't really know was abuse actually is. I was having a conversation with one of our survivor speakers, and she said, oh my gosh, you're right. I didn't realize I was being abused by somebody who has substance use, right? Like I never put that connection together, but you're right. They did have substance use. So sometimes these new facets of somebody's story will come out, and it's not because they're lying. It's not because they are trying to purposefully, withhold the truth from somebody. It's because that's how the brain processes trauma. The brain processes trauma not like normal memories, right? It's usually really sporadic and broken apart because your brain is trying to prevent you from feeling a lot of feelings at once, right? Like going through a traumatic experience is like flooding the brain with a bunch of different emotions, and that is a lot for the brain to process it in real time. So when somebody is thinking back on a traumatic experience, sometimes it takes a couple years for them to even remember everything that's happened to them.
Yeah. And again, when we're thinking about a situation like Cassie, one thing that was also shown that like Diddy would kind of use her as kind of a kind of prostitute her out to other individuals. Like, maybe let's say he meets somebody and they come over and like, go have your time with Cassie and all that, whatever. So he did that a lot. There was a lot of instances where they said that she was used for that. So when thinking about for an individual like Cassie, imagine how many times she had to disassociate in those situations where like she's having to do something that she's blatantly does not want to do. And she's having to disconnect herself. So when Caroline is talking about how it can be hard to really grasp a situation, I mean, you got to think about it. How many times you had to disassociate? Like, obviously, we're talking like very like traumatic stuff, but like think about in your own life. There'll be times that there'll be memories that I forgot I had. Like I was like, oh, I forgot I did that. Because it's like we live our lives, and you know, a lot of times we'll shut those negative thoughts out. So that's another thing is like, how many times she had to disassociate. So even having to talk about that situation, it probably is very blurry for her. And then again, drugs involved in the situation also. Yeah. This probably happened on a very regular basis too. So everything's very cloudy. I mean, it probably, you know, all the kind of things make it very hard to give a good testimony.
And speaking of that too, is I know that Diddy was not charged with human trafficking, but what you just described is the definition of human trafficking. Right. And I wanted to talk about that today too, right? So if somebody is over the age of 18, something is considered human trafficking if there is force, fraud, or coercion, even if somebody is a sex worker, right? If there is force, fraud, or coercion happening, it is defined as human trafficking. Now, if somebody's under the age of 18 and they are engaging in any type of commercial sex, that is automatically considered human trafficking. So what you just described, Cassie not wanting to do this, sounds to me like human trafficking.
Yeah, and then and another one of the charges that didn't go through, but was like the big one, was a racketeering charge. If anybody knows what racketeering is, or RICO, it's pretty much what they took down the mafia for. Again, I'm gonna make another Dark Knight reference. That's how they got the other dude also, the RICO charge. Pretty much it's just saying that you're working as a conglomerate to do illegal acts. So like for the mafia, instead of so like let's say I'm a mafia boss, instead of me going to, you know, rob somebody, I send somebody else to do it. And then that way I didn't actually rob him. It was him that robbed him. But the way that they made the RICO charge, so then they can actually say that, oh, yeah, you sent the dude. So you're creating kind of like a criminal organization by sending people to do things for you. That's kind of what RICO is. So with Diddy, what they were trying to say is that Diddy would send people out to go get the drugs, to go get the people involved. And they're kind of got to a point where he's paying people off also and all that stuff. So people were trying to get to the point that it's becoming, these parties are becoming a whole criminal organization where he's sending people out. People are protecting for him. And then the one charge that they did get him with was pretty much like prostitution over like state lines or something like that. I forgot what specifically is, but essentially saying that he would have individuals come from over state lines. So have sex workers come over state lines into wherever he's doing those acts, and you know that would be illegal. So that's the one they did get him with.
Yeah, guilty of 2 charges of transporting women for prostitution.
Yeah, exactly. So he would like send girls over. You know, let's say he's in Miami, he'd order some chicks from like Atlanta or something like that, and that's illegal. So that's what they did get him with, and that was only. I mean, he only has a few years, but I mean, few years, and it's probably only going to be a few months. And even if he is in jail, like he's rich, like he's not living in block 0. He's over there like in a hotel or something like that. So it's like, that's the thing. Again, power. Even when we put these people away, they find ways to try to, you know, rid the system. So yeah, that's kind of the thing with Diddy, is that like there was a lot of other stuff that happened aside from what was kind of shown.
Yeah. And I know technically racketeering is not human trafficking, right? But it is a form of power control. Absolutely, right? Yeah. It is, I have the money to make you do things even if you are being coerced into doing it.
Right, exactly. And that's why it's like, I always bring up the mafia example because that's when it first started. It was this idea that like they couldn't take down these mafia bosses because they were constantly sending other people out and they were never actually getting their hands dirty. So they were sending out people to do murders, do all these other things. And because they never did it, they felt free. But again, luckily the justice system, they figured that out, where it's like, and then when we're thinking about Diddy, again, maybe he wouldn't actually abuse individuals. Maybe he wouldn't actually pay the person through his pocket, but he sends somebody to do it for him. So that's where they tried to make the charge. And like we said, with all the other things that we talked about, that's why it can be hard to actually a RICO is very hard to do, because again, you got to really prove it. And with everything we're talking about, is a rich person. He probably coerced a lot of individuals, so it's hard to really make that connection to him being like a kingpin of sorts.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in your opinion, how does this legal outcome, Diddy's outcome, reveal, or what does it reveal about how the U.S. law handles, I'll just say, power-based violence, right? Because whether it's the racketeering or the human trafficking, it is power-based violence.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just, obviously it's a scary testament in the sense that we're constantly seeing this idea that if an individual is very powerful, they can find ways to show, like, again, this shows the power imbalance. If you're somebody that's very powerful, you can get the best lawyers. The best lawyers are going to find the best ways to kind of give you the least charges. So it just kind of shows how so much power can help you in a legal sense.
Not only financial power, but clout too, and how important you are in what you're doing, your career, or where you live, right?
Right, and then because we're thinking about with Diddy, like we said, oh my God, if you hear what we're talking about, everybody must hate Diddy, right? No. After his trial and he goes free, there's hundreds of people outside celebrating and talking about how Diddy needs to be free. So like I said, and those are individuals that, for their own reasoning, it's not the case. They're like, I like Diddy and I want him to be free. Like, that's really it. Not everybody's thinking about the actual victims and everything like that, survivors and everything. So that's why it's so important to have these conversations, because people just see a headline and see all these crazy things. But when you really speak to the individuals and learn about their experience, you see how impactful it can be and how it's so important to stop and more specifically have these conversations, to have people really be understanding, now hopefully individuals will start trying to be kind of creepy with people because of what they've seen with Diddy, but you never know. But
and just because you like somebody doesn't mean that they have not harmed another person. Right. Just because you have a good experience with somebody doesn't mean somebody else has a good experience with them. Like you were saying before, like you truly believe, like, my experience is not the same as others. And I think a lot of people can lose that, right? Well, I have a good relationship with fill in the blank, so they would never act that way. Yeah. But the unfortunate case is if they're being, if it's alleged, 9 times out of 10, I'm trying to remember the statistic. I think it's 95% of the time, especially when it comes to sexual assault, it's usually a true allegation.
Yeah. And that's the thing is why we need to advocate for survivors, be on the side of, it's not all about like again, specifically with the Diddy thing. Let's stop thinking about we need to put Diddy in jail, and we need to talk about we need to support the people that he hurt. Because when people just think specifically about the legal thing, and obviously we should, but the whole idea is to focus on the impact that he's done on people and how we can help support and, have justice come. So, it's just, it's a scary thing because it just shows how hard it is to really, or how money can really, and power can really help an individual, rid them of some situations. Like I said, Diddy probably thought about a lot of this stuff beforehand. So that's why it's just kind of, it's unfortunate to see, but, hopefully in the future, everything comes around.
Absolutely. And I do want to share too, just because we are talking about Diddy, a black man, right? And I think it's important to note too that there have been many times historically and currently where specifically white women or the white community has falsely accused black men of sexual assault or sexual violence in general as a way to harm that community and to harm that person. So again, just want to make sure that we all know that unfortunately that has happened, that does happen. So that's important to talk about as well. Obviously, with the Diddy trial, this many different people are coming out and saying, no, this happened, right? But just wanted to give that caveat to that. The amount of people who lie about sexual assault, human trafficking is very, very, very minor. Very, very minor, but it has been used to harm people. Yeah,
and that's again, to connect it back to when we're talking about Project Hearts, this is why it's so important to be careful and be very conscious of the individuals that you decide to be in a relationship, whether it's sexual or emotional really be careful, because like we said, all these other things can really happen. If there's an individual that has power over you, has emotional attachment over you, really need to be careful, because there's things that, again, a lot of other things that can happen if you don't take the proper precautions. So definitely be careful of the people that you're with. My mom always told me, or my parents always told me, show me who you're with, I'll show you who you are. So be careful who you're around, because it can be reflective on who you are. And, it could lead to a lot of unfortunate situations. So that's kind of the big thing I would really want to emphasize is, like, being careful of the people that you're around, who you're deciding to be in a relationship with, and make sure to keep people around you. Because one thing that we think about this case is also, we talk about one thing we talk about is one loves 10 signs of an unhealthy relationship, 10 signs of a healthy relationship. One of those unhealthy signs is isolation. That's kind of what was happening with Cassie, where the person is keeping you away from your friends, your family, so you don't feel like there's anywhere to go. So that's why, again, it's so important to stay connected with your community, stay connected with your family. If you have loved ones within your life, make sure to be in community, because we don't want to. You're never alone. There's always people here for you, and you don't want to give an individual like that the power to try to control you and isolate you. So definitely stay connected, and be careful who you spend your time with and who you decide to get intimate with, or even just be in a relationship with. Just definitely be as careful as possible.
And if something has happened, know that Hartley House is here for you too. If you have been isolated to the point where you don't feel like you can rely on friends or family members to share what you've been going through, Hartley House is here for that. Our 24/7 hotline number is at the top of the show. You can also go to our website, www.hartley, heart like the organ, ly, house.org, and learn all about our support services. And if you're not from Frederick County, then still call our hotline. Our hotline workers are amazing, and they could get you the operation or the nonprofit that helps people in your specific county or area too.
Yeah.
And so I know you talked a lot about, or I should say, I know you talked a little bit about the Diddy parties also being quoted as freak-offs that involve drugs and also recorded abuse. So how do you think communities and professionals can work to prevent environments like the one that Diddy fostered, where such dynamics, such power imbalance dynamics can thrive?
Yeah. One thing I definitely emphasize a lot is just the sense of community. We talked about being connected to community, and back in the day, people always talked about it takes a village to raise a family. And I think that's the biggest thing that we need to do is like have more checks and balances. I think a lot of these situations thrive because a lot of people are isolated. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. They're alone. They're trying to feel something. They want to get some enjoyment out of their life. So they're going to these extreme lengths to do these things. So I think the biggest thing is like really building a community. It could be like, if you go to a church of some sort, go to your gym, join a hobby, get connected with your family. Just try to connect with people around you. So then, we have more checks and balances where if an individual is feeling bad about themselves, you have somebody there for you to support you, or even, just talk to you about that situation. And just the biggest thing is so individuals don't feel alone. So individual think about Diddy, when we think about individuals who are like abusers or have those tendencies, they're going to try to target people who are, like when we're specifically talking about in school, they're going to talk about people that don't have the best relationships at home.
Maybe young.
Yeah, younger. So that's the biggest thing is like making sure you're not isolating yourself, that you're connected to the people around your area. I mean, I'm not saying you need to have like 50 friends and know all your family members, but at least have some people in your life. It could be a counselor, it could be a coach. Like you said, it could be a pastor of some sort. So having people around you so you don't feel alone, so you don't feel like you need to take these lengths, so you can have these conversations whenever you feel, any sense of loneliness or have some kind of urge, you have people around you to stay connected with. So I would say that's the biggest thing, man. We need to work towards building our villages again and getting in our little tribes, and still working within our families and connecting with the community around us and not staying in our little pods where we're living kind of very individualistically. Just working to work as a growing community would really help kind of having these situations not persist.
Absolutely. Libraries is also a good one
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
And I know if you're around the Emmitsburg Library area, again, that's in Maryland, they do have a community library. No, why can't I speak today? A community garden.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So if you ever wanted to get into gardening, that's a great option too.
Yeah, exactly. And again, YMCA's. There's a lot of they have the whole gym center, and they have a lot of cool stuff going on there. So that's the biggest thing, man. Yeah, just try to connect, meet people, and just try not to feel alone. And also, when we're thinking about just relationshiply, biggest thing is like I think a lot of individuals, the reason that they're always looking for more is like they're really afraid of being alone. That they feel like, man, I don't want to be alone, so I got to go do this, and I got to get in this relationship, or I got to go to this party, so I can feel like my life is enjoyable. Man, be more okay with being alone. Chill in your peace. If you're in a place that maybe you don't have many friends, don't have many people to talk to, man, go to the park and just sit in the park and think. Go paint, do something to like feel like you did something in your life, so you're not constantly shutting yourself off. 'Cause, I remember in my days when I was younger and I dealt with a lot of emotional issues, depression, stuff like that. It was when I was closing myself off. I wouldn't leave my room. I wouldn't want to talk to anybody. My mom would make me leave my room and talk to people and go outside. And even though that Band-Aid kind of stung when I ripped it off, it helped afterwards because you feel a lot more connected. Now, I mean, I'm very happy. A lot of people in my life and feel good, So stay connected with the people around you.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily the quantity of people, it's also the quality of that
Absolutely.
relationship too. And also, when it comes specifically to depression and depressive symptoms, right? They are very isolating in nature. And so sometimes breaking that and going outside and stepping outside of your comfort zone can help to get somebody out of that. But then there's also, going to a counselor, getting medication, right? Depending on how severe the depression is. So there's so many different options out there, and you don't need to feel alone. You don't need to be alone. There are people here who want to be with you and want to help you and enjoy life with you.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that you said is options. Yeah, there's many options of what you can do. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of things you can do. You can get medicated. Anything that makes you that helps you a lot. There's a lot more stuff than you'd be surprised. Even me working with Harley House, I'm like, wow, I didn't know that we had this, we had that. There's all this kind of things. So yeah, definitely a lot of options. So just look for them, or spend some time.
So last two quick questions. So for anyone who may suspect that they are experiencing some type of power and control imbalance in their own relationships, what are some practical steps that they can take?
All right. Well, yeah. So I like to think in perspective. If I was talking to a kid in the classroom, first thing when we're thinking about, is my relationship unhealthy? Again, go to onelove.com. They have the 10 signs of a healthy relationship, 10 signs of an unhealthy relationship. They have a lot of different videos that go along with it. So that's one easy step, is like, all right, let me look through these signs. Do I see a lot of these signs within my life? Okay, that might be a problem. And then, and one thing we need to understand about the signs too is, nobody's perfect. There'll be some times that a lot of individuals, when we're talking about unhealthy relationships, they might be exhibiting these behaviors that, again, they might be something that they saw at home. So my point in saying that is a lot of people don't even know that what they're doing is unhealthy. So it's getting that understanding, maybe having a conversation with a person. And if it doesn't go well, I'll quote my mom. She always told me, in relationships, it's like a balance. Like if you find that there's a lot more unhealthy situations than there are healthy, then that might be a situation where you might leave that relationship. Now, next step, let's say I wanted to leave the relationship. Yeah, that's a tough thing to do. First thing I would advise is definitely call the hotline. When we're talking about the hotline, this doesn't mean that you need to be in the moment and they're like, they got to call the ambulance right now. Like, no, you could call the hotline and ask them simple questions, have a conversation with the person on the line and ask them about their relationship and get some guidance through that. But that's another thing, find some guidance through that. And then let's say you did want to separate yourself from the relationship. Again, everything's case by case. But first is finding a support system. We have like a breakup safety plan. And let's see if I can remember the whole thing. But first thing is finding a support system. Finding people, if you were thinking about leaving the relationship, that can support you with that situation. So
Because
finding.
even leaving a healthy relationship is hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's not it's not always easy. It's just this is somebody that you're attached to, no matter what. You're intimate with this person. You really care about them. So having to detach from them, even if it's healthy or unhealthy, can be hard. So finding a support system very important. Thinking about like emotional self care before and after. So thinking about what can I do to make myself feel better beforehand. Maybe that's taking a walk, listening to music, something like that. What can I do afterwards? Maybe go to sleep. Some kids say that. Go to sleep, hang out with your friends, play video games, take a walk, something like that. So that's one thing you want to think about. What can I do to make myself feel better from this situation? And also thinking about like safety precautions. When we're talking about, let's start with this. If it's a normal relationship, again, probably looking to have this conversation with the person face to face, being very clear about your boundaries and what you're okay with, what you're not okay with. And again, if it's not working out, then just amicably ending the relationship in the most respectful way would be the best thing to do. But again, if you're in a situation where it is abusive, this person has already been physically, emotionally, this is an abusive individual and you may fear for your life. Yeah, definitely. One thing you want to do is that people don't really think about is like, if you really do fear this person is going to do something abusive physically, like contact your local authorities. Let them know, hey, I'm looking to break up with this person. I fear that they're going to be doing something. So, please like keep an eye on them, or maybe let them know where you're looking to break up with them. Because another thing we're going to talk about is like location. Where are you going to break up with this person? When we're talking about kids in school, would you want to break up with this person first thing in the morning on Monday morning? Probably not, because you're going to have to be dealing with that through the whole week. So maybe thinking about doing that on a Friday and doing it where people are you don't want to be alone with the person, because if this person gets very emotional, maybe, and again, it doesn't have to be abusive, but if it is even a normal relationship and the person gets very emotional and obviously you have this attachment, you might not, it might, blur your view on the relationship. So definitely finding ways to stay safe, doing it around people where people can support you. And if something happens, they're there for you and they're witnesses or whatever happens. And another thing, when we're thinking about breaking up with somebody, and specifically if they're abusive, I wouldn't say this for any normal relationship, but if they're abusive, yeah, I would be an option to break up over text or phone if you do fear for your safety. Again, if it's a normal relationship, do not break over the phone, over the text, because I feel like you deserve
Don't ghost them.
Yeah, don't do that. You respect the person enough to look at them in the eye. But if you do fear for your safety, I wouldn't. I mean, if it was my daughter, I'm like, yeah, because you got to understand that you don't necessarily owe this person. Like, I don't have to go talk to you. I really don't. Like, so it's a courtesy for you to want to have to speak to them. So if you're fearing for your safety, definitely finding other ways to break up them, whether if it's over text, over phone, or have a family member accompanying you to do it. That's one thing that you want to do. So yeah, those are a few tips that I can think about off the top of my head in order to stay safe.
And our hotline workers are amazing, so they can create a plan with you about your specific scenario, especially if you're feeling unsafe about leaving the relationship.
Yeah. And the one thing I actually forgot to mention is also when we're thinking about safety precautions, social media. You got to think about, we always talk with kids, what's one thing that people love to do when they first get in a relationship, and that's share location. So definitely if you're looking to break up with a person, stop sharing your location. Again, maybe you guys go to school together, taking different routes to go to your classes, so that this person doesn't try to stay involved. Because one thing that happens in these situations that not a lot of people talk about is how prominent stalking is. You're thinking about an individual that you're dealing with that is attached to them, they're probably not going to be okay with. Most people aren't just going to be like, oh, okay, well, that's cool, bye. No, a lot of people are like, no, I want this relationship. So this person might try to stalk you. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be, they're going to do something. Hopefully not. But it's just this person might. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This person might still be attached. So taking different routes. Oh, sorry. Maybe you guys work somewhere, driving different routes. Social media, definitely change your social media your social media passwords, yeah, but your username, so this person can't stalk you on social media also. I would definitely recommend that. So there's a few other precautions to take, but specifically if you are somebody in the situation, definitely call the hotline, and they'll, like Caroline mentioned, they'll walk you right through it, and it can be specialized to your specific situation.
Cool. All right, last question real quickly. We ask all our guests this, but what keeps you grounded?
Yeah, I would say the main thing that really keeps me grounded, definitely my faith in my family, and my beliefs and everything like that. That keeps me grounded, motivates me every day. And then, yeah, like I said, my community, I feel like I have a responsibility to help people. And I always say my goal, well, when I was in Towson University, I was part of this group. It's called Man to Man. It was kind of like a youth group, youth men's group. And that's one of the things that inspired me. I forgot to mention that. That inspired me to work in Hartley House. And one of the things they told us when we were there, this was when I was still in school, is like, what is your why? You got to understand, what is the reason that you're here in school? A lot of people go to school because they feel it's the next step, but your why. So I feel like my why is I want people to be the best versions of themselves. So that's really what motivates me, is my faith. I know everything's going to be okay in the end. My family, the support system, I really couldn't possibly ask for a better support system. Like, my parents are awesome, my brothers, my sister, my friends, my church, people at my gym, a lot of support. So that's one thing that really helps me stay grounded, is that like, I know there's people around me, I know I'm protected. And yeah, I love myself. So I think that's another big thing, is loving yourself and caring about being your biggest fan.
I love that. Let's end on that, because we all can learn to love ourselves better. Truly, I think that's amazing. I think the world would be so much of a better place if we all learned how to love ourselves, even when we weren't given that love as a kid, right? We can be that person now who is going to give ourselves that love. There's so many different ways I can go about that, but our time is up. Thank you so much, Alexis, for sharing all of your knowledge about not only the Diddy trial, but what you do with Project Hearts. You're just amazing, and I'm so glad to call you a coworker.
Thank you. No, thank you guys. I mean, this is a great opportunity, and I really love talking about this. And thank you so much, Caroline, for setting this up. I love to talk about this kind of stuff. So hope everybody's okay, and wish all the best,
Yeah. A huge thank you again to Alexis Delgado for being on today's episode. It is October, the 1st of October now, and I will like to share that we will be having our annual Walk a Mile in Their Shoes event. So we will be in Baker Park on Saturday, October 18th, again for our annual event, and it will be 80s themed. Bring out your crazy hair and your bangles. And it is our biggest fundraiser event of the year. So please come out, make a fundraising team, and walk to show support not only for Hartley House, but for all of the victims and survivors in the Frederick County community. Feel free to register at www.hartleyhouse.org/WAM. And the day prior, so October 17th, we will be having our Carbo Load event called Cocktails and Carbs at the Delaplane, and you can register at the same link. See you then.